I done told you about the exclusive interview with the Dr. Tlaleng Mofokeng, aka Dr. T, a South African medical doctor, a women's rights activist, a sexual reproductive health rights activist, and a United Nations Special Rapporteur. Dr. T, thank you again for gracing us with your presence in the Purple Couch. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. And how are you doing today, Doctor?
I'm doing okay. I think under the circumstances, I'm quite excited by going back into clinical practice and focusing on sexual health. And yeah, I'm quite good. And you?
I'm very fresh. I'm actually honored to be in your presence.
Oh, thank you, man. Thank you.
Now let's just get straight into it. I want to start with the SRH, the sexual reproductive health. Now, our audience varies from the ages of 13 years to 25 years of age. Now, in what ways can we just simplify these three words, sexual reproductive health, for them to further grasp and understand them?
So, sexual and reproductive health rights encompass very big themes and very different things, right? So let's talk about sexual health, for example. It's not merely just absence of disease, right? It's about wellness in both your psychological, social, and physical health, which will then include sexual health. When you're thinking about sexual rights, for example, those talk about your human rights that are inherently yours just for being human and being born, right? And it means that, of course, because I work with human rights and then the UN, my perspective is always about the obligations of the state and governments to make sure that they protect these human rights. And in this case, sexual rights, to be who you are, to love who you want to love, to have sex and have consensual sex with whoever you want, and also have pleasurable experiences. And that's why it's important to always draw from the WHO's definition, of sexual and reproductive health, because they also talk about the right to have meaningful, affirming sexual, pleasurable experiences.
Very interesting. Now, not so long ago, beginning of this month, February, we had the STI and Condom Awareness Week. Now, what do you think, in which ways do you think can we normalize the awareness to be an everyday thing for young people?
So firstly, we need to be honest with young people, right? I was a young person. Now I'm an elder youth, but don't tell people. But I'm an elder youth.
I got you.
But in my younger days, I used to be so frustrated by the type of messaging that accompanied the use of condoms, right? As if it's all about disease prevention, which is important, but that's not all that it's about. And so now in the work that I do, I always talk to young people and be honest that in fact there are ways of enhancing sexual pleasure and using condoms, because many of them are no Dr. T, we chaperone because pleasure is better.
Whatever, yeah.
So that's why we have to talk about lubricants, right? Because if you are using a lubricant while you are using a condom at the same time, you are able to enhance the ability to have sexual experiences that are enjoyable for people who are partaking in that experience. But also, it's important to know where to get them, and that embarrassment of going to the teller, when you want to pay for condoms. We need to normalize and take away the stigma. And the only way of doing that is such programs of yours, because you are speaking to the young people directly. But I think the job of government, the job of leaders, the job of people who are responsible for the money, right, that goes into these programs, is to let young people lead and not speak for young people or think on behalf of young people. Let them lead. And the needs of young people today are differently from the needs of when I was a teenager, for example. And so we have to allow health communication that goes with pop culture, that understands the context of young people's lives in that time. I can't be Dr. T and insisting to talk to you about condoms the way that they were spoken to me about. And insisting to talk to you about condoms the way that they were spoken to me about. It won't work. Yeah.
Now, you've touched on a very serious matter, time frame. Most parents are not open regarding SRH with their kids, but they expect their kids to have the discipline and the manners of not being sexually exposed. What do you say? What can you say to parents out there for them to bridge the gap with their kids and to be open with the talks of SRH with their kids?
So important, because also caregivers, right? South Africa has a lot of young population whose parents did pass away because of HIV at the time when ARVs were not available in this country. So not only is it just parents, but it's also just caregivers generally in our communities, because we know many of us were raised by not just our mothers, but our grannies and extended families. And it's how do you have a society that understands and affirms and respects the natural progression and inquisitiveness of young people. One thing that I really tell parents not to do is to not reprimand their children for asking questions, because you are saying to them, in this household, in this space, you are not allowed to not know anything. You are not allowed to ask anything. And because you are asking me something, firstly, that maybe I'm fearful to talk about or I don't have information to talk about, you are now, right, showing me my deficiencies, and I don't like that. So your ego comes through. That's when parents start to say things like, if you get pregnant,